Listen up. It's time for a politically entertaining exclusive interview.
Today's guest has done a lot of interesting things. She's an entrepreneur, and she's received numerous awards for her accomplishments. She's one of the leading voices against autism. Miss Terri Matthews, how are you this morning, ma'am?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. We want to thank you for joining Politically Entertaining today.
Thank you so much for having me. I was listening to one of your podcasts, and I thought, oh, this is pretty cool.
All right. Well, let's hope we can keep you thinking that way. I mentioned you to some of my friends. I let a few of them know that I was getting ready to interview you, and I had them check out your website. And the response was the same each time. They were like, she's the type of woman that I'm striving to be like, and she just seems so amazing and everything. So for some of our listeners, can you tell us some of the things that you have done throughout your career, and what are some of the things that you're currently doing?
Well, I say sometimes I'm a jack of all trades and a master of all. I know I know that's not how it's said. I kind of made my own version. But, my heart and my love is definitely in helping people achieve their dreams, their goals. And I think dreams sound so cliche. But, my past work has been definitely in business, and I've worn a variety of hats. I've worked in corporate America. I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and right now my fight and part of my work is definitely with autism because I have a 9-year-old son who's autistic. So I've worn, a lot of hats in a variety of industries. So, again, that's why I like to say I'm a jack of all trades, and I master them.
Okay. Very well. And what are some of the things that you're currently doing?
So right now I'm really focused heavily on, a couple of personal initiatives for me. I'm working with Sabrina Bittmall, who's my partner, and also Lisa Ray, who's also a partner, and another friend of mine named Kimberly Moore. And there's a brand that we're working on known as ICAN. We spell it IKAN. And it's basically a movement. It's encouraging women that they can do anything that it is they set their mind to. And so we've come up with quite a few different products, everything from clothing to actual skin care. And, we're really pushing to encourage women that anything is possible, and they don't have to limit themselves regardless of their socioeconomic status, their background, their race, challenges that they have had to go through, that, they can do it. So that's a love right now of mine. I'll stay forever working on autism. So I don't think there's a day that I don't deal with autism from one end or the other, whether it's bridging families to make sure that they get services, so bridging families that have gaps financially to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need in the community. I also opened a healthcare company, so that has kept me tied down quite a bit because healthcare has so many different dynamics, and we are trying to make sure that we increase, even if it's not required, but increase the level of service that people get in the healthcare industry. So those are some top initiatives that I have at the moment. There's others, but I'm not allowed to speak about them just yet.
Okay. Well, sounds like you have a lot going on. You mentioned autism. Autism, it affects 200,000 new kids each year. It affects 1 in every 68 kids between the ages of 2 and 3. Now, your son, Jaden, he was diagnosed when he was 2.5, correct?
Yes, he was diagnosed when he was 2.5. And, Byron, if I can just correct you, right now, actually, they're saying really it's 1 in 45. There's been some opposite reports to increase that. I spoke with NBC in reference to it. They believe that they had misdiagnosed a few children and some things were under the radar, and they're realizing that it's such a huge problem, and they're not sure how to get their hands around it. And more kids are able to be diagnosed even as early as 12 months. I wouldn't recommend earlier than that, but definitely between the ages of 12 and 18 months. And so They're trying to really identify what's the most appropriate type of diagnosis and who should be allowed to diagnose children, just so they're not labeled, but also so they're not missed. So yes, it's the fastest developmental disability in the United States. It's more diagnosed than any other childhood illnesses or disease. And to be honest, our arms are tied up because we're not sure what we're going to do. We have a high population of people that will be aging out of the system. And what that means is we won't have jobs or places for them to live, which will impact our world, truly.
Thank you for the correction. I read up on autism, and it seems like it's something that they're still learning and figuring out about. And as you said, it's like the fastest growing disease. And one of the reasons is because they don't know how many kids that they miss, many years ago that may have had it. And it's something that they're still kind of learning about. You mentioned some of the goals of Jaden's voice. What can you say are some of the difficulties of raising a child with autism?
Well, I would have to say there's such a high span or range, if you will, of difficulties. But I can tell you, fortunately and unfortunately, I've been able to wear many hats as a mom with an autistic child. So, I always say all the time, I've been everything but homeless with Jaden. So the challenges that come with having a child that's on the spectrum is if you're a working mom, the challenges come from there are behaviors sometimes that happen. You get called off of your job, and not too many jobs are going to deal with you constantly being called off. If you are in a marriage, it impacts marriages sometimes. It impacts the other children in the home because, your whole life is centered around, quote, unquote, fixing or trying to improve this child that has these additional challenges. These families sometimes become isolated. There's stigmas that are associated with autism because as much as we feel like we know, we are so far behind in our understanding. And so, people even look at Jaden and go, well, he doesn't look autistic. And I'm like, well, what does autism look like? So it's like, our understanding of what autism is and is just not there. So our communities are challenged. People stop going to church. They stop going out to eat as a family or individually with that particular child if you're a single parent. There's just so many things. There's challenges in schools. The schools don't know how to appropriately support our kids, and there's a huge financial burden that's associated with autism. Although when your child is diagnosed, you do receive or you're eligible to receive, no matter how much money you make, just as an example in the state of PA, you're eligible for Medicaid. You can make $10 million a year. You can have another insurance, but Medicaid becomes your primary. And the challenge even with that is if you have a non-speaking child, 30 minutes of speech won't work. So most parents end up, if they can afford it, going out to get additional therapies and different services. So there's just so many challenges that come with it. A lot of these parents don't get breaks because they can't leave their child anywhere because sometimes people don't know how to deal with a nonverbal child. And some of these kids, not that they're not all nonverbal. Some speak very well, but they have what people would consider challenging behaviors or a sense of awkwardness or uniqueness to them. And it's challenging for people to leave their children with others because they just are not sure if they can take care of them. So it's a span. It really is. But I really want to help be a voice to not only just focus on the challenges that come with autism, but the hope that there is, and to let parents know that they're not alone and they can speak about it, and and not to be ashamed.
An important thing that you guys are doing at Jaden's Voice too, besides financially helping families, is you mentioned how so much is not known about autism, and you guys are trying to educate people and spread awareness, and that's just important. That's just as important as the financial aspect of it, isn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do way more than the financial piece. I mean, the financial piece for us is not necessarily placing money in hands, but placing resources in hands that people can't afford to get to. So that's one aspect. We put iPads in parents' hands so that they can become a speech therapist for their own child. So we teach parents how to be teachers to their children. because they can't get to those resources. Some of these parents or kids have to get on buses, and if you know anything about autistic children, sometimes being overstimulated creates them to go into something called a meltdown. And a meltdown is different than a tantrum. You're not negotiating with, him or her saying, hey, mommy will give you a sticker, or, you want some ice cream, to get them to calm down. Not even a threat, for taking toys, or if you're a parent who spanks or whatever it is that you do. None of that stuff works with an autistic child. They don't have that kind of level of reasoning or fear. And so, outside of just making sure that we're educating the community, and community is, we educate doctors, believe it or not. We educate pediatricians. The assumption is that, it's a pediatrician, they should know. But most pediatricians don't really diagnose all the time for autism. It's usually a developmental pediatrician that should be diagnosing for autism. And so there's all these little complexities that just come around the space of autism, and we're just so busy trying to educate the churches, for the schools, the doctors, the everyday people, the bus drivers, and then also educating families and even stores. I mean, we go to restaurants and just as an example, the Eagle Stadium, all of their entire 3,000 staff is trained on how to deal with autism should they have a situation where someone brings an autistic individual to a game. So it's a big thing, if you will, and a lot of challenges associated with it, but hey, we're up for the fight.
We are talking to Terri Matthews. You can read up on her at justterri.com. That's just Terri, Terri.com. And Jaden's Voice, JADENS voice.org to learn more about autism. My co-host Frank, he couldn't be here for this interview, but he did read up on you. And one of the questions that he was very curious about, he's a new parent, and new parents, new first-time parents, they have a lot of worries about things, about what their kid may or may not have. And
Absolutely.
what he wanted to ask you was, autism obviously is a difficult thing to deal with, but in any way, have you looked at it as a blessing in the sense that it has driven you to start Jaden's Voice and to help so many other families?
Well, I would say it is an absolute blessing. I mean, it has taught me so many things. Unconditional love. You have to have patience with an autistic child. There is no option. You have to understand compromise. You have to recognize being flexible, having a level of flexibility. And, like I said to you earlier, I've worn many hats with Jaden. I've been a married mom. I've been a divorced mom. I've been a dating mom. I've been a business mom. I've been a corporate mom. I've been an unemployed mom. So I have been in all of those categories, if you will, and with an autistic child. So by being in all of those areas in my life and having to deal with these challenges that have been placed before me, it helped me recognize so many things that I didn't see before. And in reference to autism, I think that how it changed my life was it gave me all of the skill set that I thought I had and I had used in business. I definitely have used it to build this nonprofit organization, and I have definitely used it to help the parents that are dealing with autism, because a lot of them sometimes feel like their whole life has to be quit. They have to quit life, in a sense, to take care of this child, and many of them honestly do. But then they fall into depression, and they don't understand their value anymore. And, I deal with fathers who, men are, let's face it, men are fix-it people, right? And if they're in their heart, they want to protect their family and fix things that they feel are broken. And when they can't fix it, it creates a problem for them, and it can create a problem in their marriage. I mean, I've had officers call me, ball players call me that are seriously in tears and struggling with the situation of how to deal with autism. And so, I thank God that he felt like he could trust me to get his word out and get his word out even through autism. I've prayed with many parents. I've stayed up late hours of the night. I've driven on the phone while mom is considering killing herself and killing her child because she couldn't handle this child who was just so out of control. And I don't know, when people think of a kid being out of control, we just think about it from our standpoint of, well, it can't be that bad. You punish a child, you sit them down, you put them in the corner, you take away things. But with an autistic child, those types of things don't work. Their negative behaviors escalate and escalate, and they can cry for 45 minutes. I've seen them cry for 2 hours straight, nonstop, at a high-pitched level, not just screaming at the top of their lungs. So it takes a lot out of you, and life doesn't stop because you have an autistic child. So whatever you were going through before, you're still going through. Or whatever you got to go through, you're still going to go through. And now you just add this additional challenge in your life. So I can tell you that personally for me, it has been a blessing. I've been able to connect with a lot of families and a lot of people. We've been able together to create some major changes across the United States. We've had city, state, and federal officials look at us and adapt some of the things that we've requested to be changed. And it takes time. Nothing is done overnight. Rome wasn't built overnight, as they say. And so I'm grateful to be able to have this opportunity. And more important for these new parents, we're able to continue to educate, not to scare them. Every child born is not autistic. But we have the great opportunity to get before these parents and make sure that they're getting services and connected to resources early on. So should their child be autistic, the likelihood of them being set up for success is better.
You are like your living inspiration. I hope you know that. We had a guest on last week, and I mentioned an article I saw in Forbes, and I wanted to just briefly go over with you by you being an entrepreneur. And one of the statistics that really stood out to me is African American women. I didn't notice at the time were the fastest growing entrepreneurs in this country, but despite that, they're only receiving about 0.2% of them are only receiving money for their start-out companies. And when they do receive money, on average, it's like $36,000 versus $41 million on all other companies. So $36,000 for companies headed by black women versus $41 million in all other companies. As an entrepreneur, are those numbers surprising to you, or is that something that you kind of already had an idea of?
Well, I will tell you, I didn't know those numbers specifically, but they are not surprising. A lot of times where I'm spending time talking to women, because I was just on a panel discussion, and, I had a lot of young women that are super talented. They just get it. They are putting together things for, products and services and different types of businesses that are very unique or enhanced possibly, and have great offerings and have the opportunity to make these women, some serious residual income where they can sit back. Where I have found that most people are challenged, or where they're challenged at, is the income portion, the startup, the working capital. And
right.
All of these grants, sign up for this grant, be participant in this city grant or this, and we're going to help you open your business. And do I believe some of those things are true? Yeah. But I don't think we really know how to reach them. And I don't really think, to be honest, they're made for us to reach them. And so what ends up happening is you have these women who have these awesome ideas that have such opportunity to create such an amazing residual amount of income and put them on the front of Forbes on a regular basis. And they never get to reach from, I would say, conceptual idea to reality. And the challenge has been because of money. We are not taught early on. I taught a class with women who have been in business for 15 years. I talked about a Dun & Bradstreet, and 95% of the women raised their hand and said they had no clue what it was. We don't understand how to take our businesses to the next level. And I believe we're all, I think because of survival, us as African Americans, we understand how to take what we can and develop what we can. That's why we have hair shops in our community. I have a young lady I know right now that makes $8 million on 3 hair salons. You would never know it, but she does. But she doesn't know anything about business credit. She would love to franchise her idea. She doesn't have that level of understanding. And if there's additional funding that she would have needed to kind of secure buildings or locations in other types of places, she couldn't get it. And even though she was making $8 million, we don't understand how to make our money work for us. So we make money, and at $8 million, you can still be living from one paycheck per se even though you're writing your own paycheck, you can
Right.
be living from one check to the next. So the reason why is because when you see other people who start businesses, 9 times out of 10, there's a mentor that's before them. That's one. The other thing that's before them outside of there being a mentor, there are resources for them. There are opportunities for them. They come from business backgrounds. Their parents had businesses. We don't, unfortunately, a lot less of us come from those communities. And so what ends up happening is that we try, we get together, we do what we can. We don't know how to maximize if we do take this concept and make it into a reality, and we don't invest back in ourselves. So we don't think to step into classes or to understand things like a Dun & Bradstreet or how do you really franchise? Should I rent this building that my hair salon is in, or should I buy it and be rent-free? Like, we don't all the time think of those things, and we don't know how to make our money make money for us. We're used to surviving and not living, and that's a difference. And we're happy that we're business owners. But the challenge is that we don't maximize our potential, and part of it sometimes is us just because we do what we can, and a lot of times, too, is we don't have access to the resources. It takes money. I just recently started a business. I'll tell you, it cost me $450,000 up front. And glory be to God, I didn't have to take a loan for it. But the thing about it is that I thought to myself, here's this great business concept, right, I have, and I'm going to get started. I have all the numbers. Everything makes sense. And I assure you that if I stepped in a bank and would have asked for money, and I know because I've gone to a bank that I've known and had a great business relationship with for years. And I said to them, I said, hey, I just want to keep you guys on the back burner. I don't need a loan right now, but should I need working capital, I'm coming to you. Oh, okay. They told me yes, 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 but they knew that I wasn't asking for anything. So I invested the money. I opened the business. Glory be to God, the business is doing great. In 5 months, I've made $1.8 million. I haven't, the business has. Okay?
Congratulations.
So it's going, right? This is in 5 months, right? Actually, it's 4, to be honest, 4 months and 2 days. So what ends up happening is I call the bank. I said, uh-oh, we're growing at the speed of light. I mean, you know, we are on target. I think now, just in case, I need to have a loan for working capital. And I'm telling you a personal experience. You know what they told me? Before, they were shaking their head like, yeah. And you know what they turned around and said? Even though I have everything to prove it, and by the way, my money gets direct deposited to them every single week. So they know exactly how much money I have coming in. And they know exactly how much money I've been coming in. So what ends up happening is they say to me, well, Miss Matthews, this business is less than 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
Now, listen, this is a relationship. I've known these people for over 10 years. I've brought millions of dollars through there. And this isn't about bragging. But the same person of a different complexion, right, come in, and I've watched it. I've been in their bank because I have that kind of relationship with even the vice president of the entire bank. And I've watched them do approval after approval after approval. And I said to them, they said, well, we're not going to be able to really approve it. We're probably not going to look at you for another year. I said, time out. One, we have a relationship. Number two, there's proof of how much money that I brought into this company. And you're telling me that I'm not even in a high-risk business that has an opportunity to fail. In 4 months, there's been $1.8 million brought to this bank. And I have no loans. Everything in reference to this business I own. The furniture, anything that you would need to start a business, I bought. There's nothing borrowed, not even the people, okay? So I said, let me explain something to you. Why wouldn't you give me an approval? So when they told me no, that they wouldn't do it, I said, that's okay. I'll take all my business down the street. And they tried me. The next day, they called me. Oh, we're approving you. We're sending you all your stuff. We're sending over your stuff. We'll email it. So how all of a sudden, when you completely denied me and I threatened to take my business from you and you knew my potential and you've already known me and you know what money I brought to your bank before, all of a sudden you're able to automatically approve it because I threatened to leave and you knew you were going to lose a solid consumer or customer? So that goes to show me that if you've done it like that and been able to do it, they've been able to do it all along. So it's frustrating for me when, as a black woman or any woman, decides to come to a bank with a profitable idea and they know that it works, that they have this little checklist that they go by, and they forget, like, you know, hey, Terri Matthews has been doing business for 15 years. She's already brought $20-something million through this bank. They didn't even think about that. You know what they said? Oh, no, it's less than 2 years. But anybody else, and not to be, disrespectful to those folks listening, but had I been a white male, they wouldn't have even second-guessed it. I've watched it myself. I've been in the bank. I've been there. So I'm like, this is crazy that this happens to us. And it's a way to me that we get held back, and it's unfortunate.
You mentioned that you hope you don't sound like you're bragging. I didn't hear bragging at all. All I heard was frustration. What I heard was frustration, and I hope the listeners can pick up on that. You know, when you hear, sometimes you hear a politician and other people say, well, look, America is equal opportunity for everybody. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You can do everything that you possibly can, but sometimes there are hurdles put up to try and slow you down or even stop you. So I'm glad
let me tell you, it is equal opportunity. It's equal opportunity if you have the right relationships and the right money. That's who it's for. You know what I mean? The challenge is that they have all these incubators. Oh, you're going to be in business, start this business. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. Listen, first of all, it's common known statistics, period. Every person in America, Warren Buffett included, Christopher Flowers, these are people I know, okay? Every person in America that's wealthy, that understands business, will tell you have to fail 1 trillion times. And banks understand that, right? So you would think that if they're going to put programs together, they would put programs together to make sure that you don't fail. If they are going to loan you the money, which they should, right? Because that's the only way. Somebody has to take a chance on somebody. So if with all their actuaries and their people who determine risk and all of that other stuff, wouldn't it make sense that if you're going to approve a person for a $100,000 loan, a $200,000 loan, that what happens is that you assign somebody next to them that's responsible for helping them manage, because maybe this is not an area, manage their money, not their business. As long as they know how to do the business, maybe they need help in these types of areas. These are the types of services or things that we need to have more of. And to be honest, my first business I opened, as I said, as a serial entrepreneur, I've had restaurants, magazine companies, water companies, you name it. So my first restaurant I owned, and I started from scratch. I didn't buy a franchise. I started it and sold it as a franchise. They denied me. I went in the bank, said, hey, I wanted a loan. And they asked me how much I wanted, and I said, I need, $200,000+. And they looked at me like I was crazy. How are you going to pay back? It didn't matter. I had a credit score at that time of 810, and they still declined me. And I'm like, okay. They're like, you've never worked in fast food before. You're not going to. And you know what? I said, you're right. I never have. But I went and hired Jamba Juice, if you've ever heard of Jamba Juice. I went and hired the people who Jamba Juice used to build their place.
Times now.
Right. So, the thing was, I was smart enough to put the right people around me. I understood what my gaps were, and I went and found those people as consultants to help me build it, to do all these things. So I pulled this together, and to be honest, I was declined. So if I could say anything to anybody who's out there doing a business, this is 2 times the banks in my entrepreneurial career, if you will, have showed me that they can make changes. I went in, they declined me. I sat outside of that bank 2-3 days in a row till I figured out what time the president of the bank came. He got out of his car. I got out of my car. He was walking in. I said, sir, I'm sorry. I don't mean to bother you. I said, I had come to your bank to get a loan, and I was declined. And this concept or idea that I have, I feel like it will do great. If you would just give me a few moments of your time. And he said, I don't have time today. He was kind of like taken back, and I tried to be passive-aggressive in a sense, but I wanted him to understand that I meant business. And I really wanted this opportunity. And so he said, you know what? He said, I'll let my secretary know, schedule some time with you. I showed up in his fancy office, mahogany desk and all. It was him and the vice president of the bank. I brought in a blender, fruit in this office, and I started blending smoothies because I wanted to open smoothie bars and coffee bars and all of that, right? So I blend all the stuff in front of them, and he's looking at me, and he looks at the cup, and he's like, I really don't kind of like smoothies, but I'm going to try this. And he said, you know what? He tasted it. He said, and I still don't like smoothies. He said, this is okay, but I still don't like smoothies. And he said, you know what? I'm going to give you the loan because the fact that you were so strong, and regardless of the no, you didn't stop. And he said, you persevered. And he said, that means to me that even if you've never worked in fast food, and even if you have never, flipped a hamburger in your life, because I was opening a quick service restaurant. He said, no matter what all of those things are, he says, the fact that you are willing to push so hard would indicate to me that in business you will do the same thing. And because of that, you will succeed. And he said, by the way, I saw your numbers, and you asked for $225,000. You really need $278,000, so that's what we're going to give you. And he gave me my first $278,000, and I took off.
Well, we want to thank you so much, Ms. Matthews. You can learn more about Terri Matthews on our website, justterri.com, TERRI.com. Also, please check out Jaden's Voice to learn more about autism. I believe you can donate money there. You can read up on autism and learn more about it, especially if you know someone who's dealing with it. That's Jaden's Voice, JADENS voice.org. And they're also on Twitter at Jaden's Voice. And you can also follow Ms. Matthews on Instagram